Hello students, welcome to COM308. This is interpersonal communication. This lecture will be considering going over some of the basic information we need to have about the course as well as our week 1 content. To give you some context and overview, my name is Dr. Sandra Romo. You'll see some pictures of my family here as well as the Girl Scout troop I lead and my husband. My husband Mark and I have been married for almost 11 years. We have 2 children, my son Nicholas who's in 3rd grade and my daughter Emma who's in 2nd, and we live locally here in the Riverside area. We attend the Rock Church and World Outreach Center in San Bernardino. I just recently finished my PhD, so I'm currently in a rehab process. No, I'm just kidding. I'm currently just acclimating myself back to family life. I am a Girl Scout troop leader. I've led the troop for 3 years, and it's really one of my passion and things I'm very passionate about. In addition to being an avid Green Bay Packer fan, you can see this picture of us here. That was at Thanksgiving when they retired Brett Favre's jersey and inducted him into the Packers Hall of Fame. And you can just see just some pictures of my family and things of that nature. So definitely just to kind of give you some context to give you some personal information behind the voice and the face you'll be interacting with online through the next couple weeks and throughout this term. To contact me, it's pretty easy to get a hold of me. The best bet would be to just shoot me an email through Lancer Mail. Remember, Lancer Mail is the only accepted form of email communication. If you do ever email me from a personal email address, I'm going to respond back to your Lancer Mail, or I'm going to tell you to please send me an email through Lancer Mail. However, it is important to know that email is the best communication. It's synced to my phone. It's the fastest and most efficient way to get in touch with me. Generally speaking, emails are returned within 24 business hours. However, I usually respond back a lot more quickly, generally within a couple of hours or so, unless it's a weekend or holiday. Like I said, my name is Dr. Romo. I'm the program director for the Master's and Bachelor in Communication programs here in the CBU Online and Professional Studies program. This is my 8th year at CBU. I am also an assistant professor of communication, and prior to coming over to Ops full-time, I served as assistant professor of public relations and journalism courses on the CBU traditional daytime program. So I did teach for an extensive amount of time in the daytime program, communication, new media, social media, digital media, whatever you want to say, media studies and public relations courses. My office is located in the Tyler Plaza. That's the CBU satellite campus, or the Ops campus, directly across from Nordstrom's in the Riverside. I'm on the 3rd floor and I'm in office 318. The best way if you come to see me is to go up to the 2nd floor reception area and they will buzz you in to come see me. However, like I said, the best and most appropriate form of communication is through email. You can contact me via my office phone. My office hours this semester are listed in Blackboard. However, they're Mondays and Tuesdays 8 to 12. That's when I'm generally in the office available to meet with students. However, there are many other ways to meet with me throughout the week, either through phone, a WebEx video conference, or setting an appointment. So that's just some general housekeeping on how to get in touch with me and things of that nature if you need to. But like I said, email is the best and the most efficient way, especially around the weekend. I tend to be on email and aware of emails a little more frequently, just with assignments being due and things of that nature. However, I do encourage you not to wait till the weekend to email me about an assignment question, because it is the weekend and we're not required to respond back during the weekend, but I usually make a habit of doing that. But just some general guidelines with that. So here's some review of some pertinent things that are on the syllabus. Remember, this slide right here does not negate reading the syllabus. It does not give you an exception to not have to know what's on the syllabus. That's your responsibility as a student, and I'm sure you are aware of that. But just some things I wanted to point out. All discussion board assignments have 2 deadlines. Your original post, meaning your answer to the question for the discussion board, is due on Friday. Each specific discussion board has its own requirements, meaning don't get used to whatever the word count is for the discussion board number 1 requirement, because number 2 may have a different word count or a different particular assignment altogether. You may not be writing anything. You may be recording a video or whatever that may be. So your original reply, the actual assignment itself, is due on Friday. Your reply posts are due by Sunday. This is to give everybody an ample amount of time to go onto the boards and read through everybody's thing and not having to stay up till the 11th hour on Sunday night waiting for the late the late birds to post their posts. So between Friday and Sunday, you should post your replies at minimum. You can do that before, then it's up to you. There's not really a time frame on that. It's just your reply posts are due by Sunday. In order to be eligible for full credit, you must reply to at least 2 students. Also, take a look at what the syllabus says for week 8 deadlines. They do vary. They're not always the consistent standard due on Sunday. We have a tight turnaround period for final grades. The course ends on a Sunday, and when the next day professors have to get those grades in by the afternoon. So we really only have about 12 hours or so to get final grades in. So check that week 8 deadlines. Also keep in mind any assignment that requires a discussion board, like your self-reflection that's due in week 1 and such, has the Friday-Sunday deadline. Any other assignment is due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Only those that require discussion board posts or some use of the discussion board have a Friday-Sunday deadline. Late work is not accepted under any circumstances. Do plan ahead and accordingly for situations that may prevent you from doing timely work. It's really, really important that you adhere to this. I do not make a habit of utilizing any kind of late work policy. Sometimes there are exceptions to this if there's extenuating circumstances like hospitalizations and deaths in the family is really the only time that happens. If you know you're going to be traveling during week 4 and your internet connection might be spotty on that Sunday, well then touch base with me before week 4 and let me know, and we can make some accommodations to the deadline. The key here is you need to contact me in advance to let me know, hey, guess what, Dr. Romo, I'm not sure if you know, but I'm going to be out of town in week 4 and it's really important that I get this assignment in, and I'm trying my best to get it in before I leave, but worst case scenario, what can we do? And I'll be more than willing to work with you ahead of time. Weekly lectures is required for you to view. We have a weekly lecture every week. It's required for you to go through that lecture and be informed of pertinent information within that lecture. The majority of the assignment requirements are submitted and put into the weekly lectures. So you may read the assignment on Blackboard but not quite know what to expect with the assignment if you don't go through the lecture. Make sure you do that accordingly. Additionally, the interpersonal observation reports require you to observe people for at least a couple of hours. There's 3 of those due throughout the semester. Check the syllabus for those deadlines, and I'm just letting you know ahead of time so you may have to plan accordingly to get those assignments done. If you pop in on Sunday and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to do this, there's not going to be any wiggle room there for an extension or anything, because you should know well in advance starting now that those reports require you to observe people for a standard amount of time. Here are some things to expect within our course. If you look to the week 1 agenda here, you can see that our agenda is formatted in a read, watch, and complete fashion. Read is the reading content you have to do for a given week. Watch are required videos you have to watch that are posted within the module for you to understand and to enhance your learning experience. And then complete are your assignments. All of the complete section and the read section can be found in the syllabus. The watch section is required viewing for you to enhance some of the lectures and the content you'll be reading about. It's not in lieu of reading. It's not, and it is in addition to reading. It's not optional in case I feel like it. It's built into those required minutes that you must spend within Blackboard each week. The next thing is this announcements section. All weekly lectures will be posted to the announcements section. So in this section here, when an announcement is sent out, it'll be sent out to your Lancer mail as well, but will pop up in the announcement section in your home page for the course. This will show you week 1 lecture. You click it, it'll pop up with a note for myself if there's one attached, and your lecture, your video lecture or written lecture for the week. That's just some general housekeeping things for you to keep in mind as we move forward. The next thing is consists of your grading section. So for some of you, this may be review if you've taken an ops class before. This is your first online course or you're new to the Bachelor in Communication Studies program. Here are some things that are important for you to be aware of. Number 1, this is what your My Grades look like. If you want to view an attempt to a test or an assignment or anything like that, click on the actual wording for that. It's hyperlinked. When you do that, your attempts will come up. If you've submitted more than once, that's fine. The last graded attempt is the one that counts on Blackboard. Click the calculated grade to view your feedback, and then you'll see this. It's important that you look for response feedback to review instructor feedback. It's also to your advantage if there's a rubric to click the rubric. It'll show the rubric scoring and any rubric feedback in there. And that's just kind of a general overview of what to expect in the grading section. So this week we have a couple different things going on. First, we are reading Chapter 1, pages 1 through 33. You have some additional reading within Blackboard that's on the 4 principles of interpersonal communication, as well as a couple TED Talks. You're completing a self-reflection, a discussion board, and discussion board number 1. So remember, all of those are due original posts by Friday and the replies by Sunday. The self-reflection assignment asks you to compose a reflection of your own interpersonal communication behaviors that maybe you would like to change. So in this assignment, you're going to identify 2 personal communication behaviors that you think you should improve throughout the first 4 weeks of the course. Your midterm will come directly from this assignment. What you'll start doing from here on out is taking a log of those noted behaviors and looking how you correct them. Maybe you feel you don't listen as well as you should. Maybe your significant other, your parent, your sibling, somebody has told you, hey, you know what? You're not a very good listener. You never pay attention to me. Those would be interpersonal communication behaviors that you could look to improve. So what you need to do in this reflection is within 300 words, share some behaviors you think you need to improve on or you would like to improve on yourself. Then detail out how you would improve those behaviors and how you plan to make note of those improvements. So this will really start as your midterm project. What you're doing is in 300 words telling us, hey, guess what? These are 2 areas that I kind of want to improve. I know they're interpersonally related. They affect my communication with people that I'm close to. That's interpersonal communication. And this is some way, listed below are some ways that I plan to do this. And I'm also going to chart it doing this, this, and this. As we go forward, each week observe and make notes of your behaviors in your own note-taking process on your own, which will be due in week 4. And share, and eventually you'll share how you improve the behaviors or you felt you've made marks to improve your behaviors at the end of week 4. Post that to the discussion board forum for this assignment no later than Friday, and then reply to 2 course mates by Sunday, and those are the word counts there. Discussion board number 1 requires that students will watch 2 videos below. They're hyperlinked in Blackboard that show some very obvious negative interpersonal communication and behaviors. You'll notice that it is very obvious and it's very overt to see some of the things in here, and you'll notice with interpersonal communication sometimes we're speaking of the obvious. But after viewing those videos, they're probably about 3 minutes each, answer the questions below. Look for communication errors that occurred. Be specific to notate information that's from the textbook. 2, how can this situation relate to everyday life? As a budding communication scholar, which you are, how can you strive to not let this happen? How can you, as a person and a Christian, strive to improve your communication? That's number 2. 3, if you were teaching a lesson on this, on how to avoid situations like portrayed in the video, what are 3 tips you would provide to your audience and why? And be specific to cite them from the text or the 4 principles of communication reader in Blackboard. Remember that the original post is 300 words and your 2 reply posts need to be 150. Now that we've looked at discussion board number 1, it's important to take a look at some of the content we'll actually be going through this week in our course. The first thing you'll see after you go through all the videos, you'll see a body of text that discuss what the 4 principles of interpersonal communication are. I've listed here some of the most pertinent things you need to know about that, but going forward, really, it's important for us to know in interpersonal communication, sometimes this seems like we're stating the obvious. What the goal of this course is for you to look at interpersonal communication, something that we all complete every day, all the time. We all interact with people at a very interpersonal level, and to the degrees of interpersonal communication and levels of intimacy that we interact with others depends on our relationship with those people. But really here, what you'll see is that there are 4 things that we need to know going forward that interpersonal communication consists of. The first one is that interpersonal communication is inescapable. We cannot not communicate. Really, the very attempt to not communicate communicates something in and of itself. There is an old adage or debate within communication studies, and the study of communication as a whole is what is communication? What consists of communication? Is communication verbal? Is it nonverbal? Is there a theory behind it? What consists of a method of communication? For example, does this coaster speak something to us? Does it not? We had a debate within my grad school once where we had to take something like a set of keys. Here are my keys here, and determine, is this communication? Does this communicate to us? I was of the philosophy, and which most of the class was, that yes, keys do speak to us. It communicates something to us. Where we had one of our very noted and scholarly professors who's been published a number of times that said, no, there's no way keys, an inanimate object that has no soul, no purpose, no being, can communicate to us. My philosophy was that it is. If you look at my keys, you can see a number of things here. You can see this little Ewok that's seen better days, and it communicates something to us because my son picked this out for me when he went to Legoland once with his Nana. The hands have fallen off, it's worn, and there's details to it that you can see that are definitely worn out, but it speaks something to us because it represents something that my son gave me. You can look at this tattered old keychain that says I Heart New York. It's tattered and probably has also seen better days, but I told students that I took on a trip to New York that I was going to keep this keychain on here until I went again. And it's been about 4 years since I've taken students, but I've kept my word on that. How would this communicate to us? This was given to me on my very first day at CBU by my prior department chair that said, here, you always need to keep your keys on your wrists at all times, and here is a keychain wrist band for you. Kept it on here all this time. You see the distinction here when I'm talking about communication? Things that you would think have very little meaning. This was given to me also on my first day. A lanyard, a CBU lanyard that says CBU Lancers and such. There's communication everywhere. So interpersonal communication, which is interacting and communicating people with at a deeper level, building intimacy between people, levels of intimacy, is inescapable. It's something that we cannot just not do. We not only communicate just with words, but with tones, gestures, posture, facial experiences. We're constantly communicating to those around us. I can sit across from my husband in a room and I can give him a look and he knows what I mean by that look, especially if I may be just talking with somebody that's not our favorite person. So communication is there. The deeper of the intimacy or the level of intimacy you get with a person, so the deeper that you build into their lives, you know, for example, spousal communication, communication between two spouses is one of the deepest levels of communication. It would be different than what you would have with a coworker. I can look at my husband and I can know what he's thinking. I'm sure for those of you that are married, you may say the same thing. You may be able to say that with a best friend. If I haven't seen my best friend for 6 months and I see her sitting across from me in a hallway, I can just give her a little look and she'll start laughing because we've been friends for 20 years and she knows what's going on in my mind. So the point is that interpersonal communication is inescapable. It's also irreversible. You can't really take back something once it's been said. In fact, it's always there. Word sticks. People will remember things that you've said and how you've communicated to them across many different situations and things like that. In fact, there's a Russian proverb that says, once a word goes out of your mouth, you can never swallow it again. It's out, it's there, it's in the open. Especially today with the digital media world that we live in, that's even more obvious and apparent. So it's just important to keep that in mind. Interpersonal communication is also complicated. Really, there's no form of simple communication, really just because the number of variables involved really tell us that even simple requests are extremely complex. Some really noted theorists in interpersonal communication tell us that whenever we communicate, there are really at least 6 people involved. 1, who you think you are, who you think the other person is, who they think they are, and who they think you are, as well as who the other person thinks, and 30 think that you and the person should be, the type of relationship you represent. So it's really, really, really important to keep in mind. Also, interpersonal communication is contextual. Really, in other words, communication doesn't happen in isolation. There are many different situations or situational factors, contextual factors that influence our interpersonal communication. There's a psychological context, really where you which is who you are and what you bring to the interaction, your psychological needs, the different values of your personality and levels of intimacy that you have within that, as well as your relational context, the reactions and the relations you have to the people you're interacting with, the situational context, meaning what situation are you in? Are you in a work meeting? Are you laying in bed with your spouse? Are you sitting having coffee with your best friend? Whatever that may be. Environmental context as well as cultural context are all areas that can really influence us in how we communicate interpersonally with each other and how that happens. So this semester, we're going to look at interpersonal communication at a very deep level. We're going to begin to look and see the theories behind interpersonal communication, things that guide us and tell us how we naturally interact with coworkers versus best friends versus siblings versus parents versus spouses versus significant others, whatever that may be. It's important, though, as we move into that we look at that interpersonal communication is about relationships. Really, wherever you observe or give meaning to behavior to the communication is taking place, it's important to look at what the relationship is. As interpersonal communication theorists consider the idea of interpersonal interactions, behaviors, and communication, we first look at it communication as being intrapersonal or interpersonal. Intrapersonal is when you think or talk to yourself requiring only one communicator. That's your thought process and going through and defining and thinking about things that may affect your life. Interpersonal communication is ongoing, ever-changing process that occurs when you interact with another. It forms a dyad, two people communicating with one another. Going forward, we're going to look at one, is communication intra or interpersonal, and two, what is the relationship factor between the communication that's taking place, between the communicators within their communication? And that's very, very important to keep in mind going forward. Interpersonal communication takes two, meaning you have to be communicating with another person. You can also have communication, interpersonal communication, that is with three or more people that also form dyads, groups of people, an existing relationship that has an interpersonal context to your communication. But it's important to know that general communication can usually only involve one. So in mass communication, it's we like to argue in public relations, it's interpersonal, and that it's two-sided, that we need that dialectical interaction with each other. But really, as a whole, communication studies is one-sided communication. I have a message from a mass perspective to send to somebody, I'm going to send it to them, and that's it. So I'm going to send it through a broadcast, I'm going to send it through a newspaper, I'm going to send it through a blog, a tweet, whatever it may be. That's one-sided communication. It's important to know that when we interact interpersonally, it takes two. So really our goal is to treat another as people and respond as unique individuals. A continuum measures only the quality of relationships from the impersonal and interpersonal communication and intimate communication that takes place. Here's some more information about relationships. It just tells us really that the more personal a relationship is, the more independent the individuals become on each other, and that we naturally seek through our interpersonal interactions with each other in deep relationships intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So intrinsic rewards deal with emotionally, intellectually, and perhaps spiritually rewarding values to us, as well as extrinsic really is impersonal, professional, working relationships that help us to reach our goals. So extrinsic really deals with communication that helps us on the outside with outside personas, things of that nature, and intrinsic deals with more intimate, intellectual, not intellectual really in nature, but also things that affect us on the inside of who we are as a person. An effective interpersonal communicator will keep these things in mind, not to take others for granted, not to repeat scenarios or script that are doomed to fail, or to follow stereotypes. We work at building interpersonal competence and being able to communicate effectively. And here are some things to do with that. These are some of the things that we'll be working on within our week 4 midterm project. We'll be looking to increase by observing ourselves and others, by assessing who we are, practicing specific behaviors, predicting and evaluating outcomes. But most importantly, it's important to look at the interpretation of communication as a context. What factors impact how you are perceived when you communicate with somebody? We're going to look at the people involved, the messages, the channels, the noise, and the context, as well as the feedback sent. We've already gone through relationships and people. It's important to know that interpersonal communication is the act of sending and receiving messages. It's transactional, meaning I have something to say, so I'm going to send it to you, you are going to receive it, and then simultaneously respond. So it's really important to understand that transactional nature of communication. There is a purpose behind it. There are a couple of schools of thoughts when it comes to this. Some people believe that communication is very linear, which we'll get into in a second, and it takes place on a line, and it's just a transaction. That's all it is. There's another school of thought that says that communication is not linear. Really, it's more than that. It's about the message, and it's about the ritual that you build in interacting with one another. And the ritualistic view of communication tells us that we are not just imparting messages and sending them and receiving them. However, the goal is to really build that shared meaning and experience with one another within our communication, which is really important. It's important to know that when we look at channels and noises of how a message travels and the medium that sends them can interfere or impede with our ability to send and receive messages, yes, but also to interpret and understand them. So it's really important to keep this in mind. Channels would deal with the medium that we use. How are we communicating this via text message, on the phone, face-to-face, through a blog, through social media posts, maybe a passive-aggressive social media post. Whatever that may be, there are a lot of different things that can interfere with it based off of the channel of how our message is received. Noise is anything that impedes with our ability to send or receive messages. Are we hungry? Are we tired? Are we shy? Are we playing a video game? That would all impede how we receive and send messages based off of the distractions and the noise around us. So it's very, very important to also keep in mind. The next thing that we want to look at as the last thing is the three different types of models of communication shown here and the idea of ritualistic communication. So most communication is unidirectional. It's linear, meaning communication goes across a line, and that it starts like this. We have a little arrow, think of a number line, and we have a source. We have our message and we send it to a receiver. And then if the receiver has anything to say back, they'll send it back across the same line, back to the source. So it's linear. It takes place across a line. Interaction, the back and forth process, the line that I just drew gives us presence and effect for both feedback and context. Transaction really is the idea of the give and take. So here you're sending it to me, I'm sending it back to you. Really what you'll see in interpersonal communication is that we build beyond this transmission or this linear approach to communication, and we start to look at the ritual of what communication is and how that influences and affects us and how we build these experiences and these shared beliefs based off of the interactions we have with one another. That we're not just looking at the message that we're sending or how we're sending it from our source to our receiver. Meaning if I have something to say to my husband, I'm not looking that I'm the source and he's the receiver and this is the message I'm saying and now he needs to give me feedback. I'm looking for that shared experience, that belief that we have. And so maybe 20 years from now we can laugh at a situation that we had and an experience we shared with one another. That's ritualistic communication. That's really where I want to get you at the end of the semester, to see the difference between the transaction that communication typically is and looking at the ritual that we're building with one another within that process. So to just kind of go back to recap what we have, remember you're reading the reading assignments that are listed here in the read section. You're also watching the TED Talk videos, as well as completing your self-reflection and your discussion board number 1. If you have any questions, please let me know and contact me early in the week. I pray that you all have a blessed week, and I know this is going to be a great semester. We're going to start thinking about communication more deeply and how we interact with one another at a very personal level. And I look forward to interacting with you in the ethers, in the internet, in the cloud. So have a great week. God bless. Words each.